For any temperature uniformity survey, particularly to AMS 2750 and CQI9, the field test instrument accuracy is critical to the overall performance of the operation. As you can see here in Table 7, taken from the AMS 2750 standard, there are clearly defined calibration accuracy requirements for the field test instrument, or the data logger in our case. Plus or minus 1 degree Fahrenheit, or plus or minus 0.6 degrees Celsius, or 0.1% of the temperature reading, whichever is the greatest, which will vary depending on the temperature of the TUS you're performing. At the same time, there is clear defined requirements for the field test instruments readability or resolution of being 0.1 Fahrenheit or 0.1 degrees Celsius. The Phoenix temperature measurement systems all comply with these requirements. An important part of the TUS is to give full documentary evidence to the performance or the accuracy of the field test instrument. So you have to provide necessary calibration evidence of the accuracy of the instruments you're using and include those with the TUS report. For Phoenix, we can provide ISO 17025 calibration of the data loggers, which gives all of the necessary requirements as defined by AMS 2750, as seen on the slide in front of you. The calibration information for the data logger can be applied to the TUS data as a correction factor file to give the most accurate readings that you need to perform the survey on your particular furnace. Within the Thermal View survey software, we have the ability to apply logger corrections or correction factors to the raw data by creating what we refer to as a data logger calibration correction factor file. This then can be applied to the raw TUS data, stored and then used for future additional TUSs if required. Basically, the calibration data is taken and imported into a new calibration factor file and stored within the logger correction factor file library. A unique feature of the Phoenix system, though, is that the calibration information for the data logger is actually stored within the memory of the unit itself. So to create the correction factor file, it's very simple. All you need to do is connect the data logger using a comms cable to the software. And then within the logger correction factor functionality, you simply press on the import correction factor file button. It creates the file automatically with no transposing error risk that you would have if you were numerically creating your own table. You can then store this file as a unique record of the correction factors for that particular data logger and apply it for conventional use. That information that's applied to the TUS from the correction factor file is then documented completely in the TUS report that is generated from the same Thermal View survey software, giving all of the calibration data, the offset values that you can see on the table, and also the correction factors that are applied at the unique TUS levels. You can see 800, 915 and 1020 degrees. These are the 3 TUS levels. Those correction factor files may not be calibration points, but we can calculate the necessary correction factors that are applied at those temperatures using what we refer to as the interpolation or linear interpolation method. So what we're doing is we're calculating between defined calibration points what the correction factors are for each and every temperature reading that is not actually at the calibration point in the table. This gives the most accurate way of correcting all of the TUS data, and that is fully documented in the report, including how the fact that the interpolation method was applied to calculate those values. What I would like to do now is show you how easy it is to use the Phoenix field test instrument or data logger correction factor files, how to generate a new file from scratch. So if I go to the settings library files and click on logger correction, you'll see that the data logger calibration corrections dialog comes up. At the moment nothing is visible, but I can very easily go in and find a old file that's been generated. And you can see here the calibration information associated with that particular data logger 1004. In order to create a new file, I've got a data logger connected to the software as we speak, and I simply go to the top of the dialog and you've got the button that is labeled Import Correction Factor File from Logger. If I click on that, what will happen is that the software will interrogate the memory of the data logger that it's connected to, and it will generate a new calibration file import. That can then be stored within the software itself, and in order to save that I simply press the finish button. You'll notice that in the bottom right hand corner there's apply to current survey, and in order to apply that particular file to the software, then I would simply press that particular button. So I'm going to save this, and you'll now notice that if I go into the logger corrections, that new file is now available in the archive list for me to use with any survey at all. Having created our data logger correction factor file, obviously the next step would be to apply that correction factor file to the raw TUS data. On the screen at the moment you can see the 3-level TUS that we've performed. At the top of the screen you'll notice that it gives a status report of what edits have been applied to the TUS data: logger correction, thermocouple correction, and rounding. You can see that there is a red cross in each case, so that implies that there is no correction applied to that particular file. If we look at the database for the PTM that we're looking at, there's 2 sections headed thermocouple correction and logger correction, and you can see both of those are empty. There's no correction factor files that have been applied to this particular TUS. To apply the correction factor files, then, if I go to logger correction, I'm going to pick the correction factor file for the data logger that I'm using, which is 1004. It's now active on the screen. This is the correction factor file that we've historically created, and to apply that to the data I simply have to press the Apply to Current Survey button in the bottom right hand corner. If I do that, you'll now notice that in the top right left hand corner we now have a status report that implies or states that the logger correction have been applied to the TUS, and in the database file you'll see there that the logger correction has been applied, and the file that it was generated from was data logger 1004. So applying correction factors from the easily generated original file is very simple indeed. And all of this data will be then represented in the full TUS report to comply fully with AMS 2750 or the CQI requirements.